Now, there really isn't anything radically wrong with being sick or with dying. Who said you're supposed to survive? Who gave you the idea that it's a gas to go on and on and on? And we can't say that it's a good thing for everything to go on living from the very simple demonstration that if we enable everybody to go on living, we overcrowd ourselves. So therefore, one person who dies in a way is honorable because he's making room for others.
Later life. Later life is the life stage that occurs after midlife. Later life encompasses the time from age 60 to the end of life. This life stage is typically viewed as the time to retire, collect Social Security, and other retirement benefits. A special subgroup that exists in this life stage are the centenarians. A centenarian is someone who is over the age of 100. It is believed that the number of centenarians doubles every decade, most likely due to increased longevity as a result of advancing healthcare. Later life expectancy refers to the number of years someone can expect to live past 65.
Aging. There are 3 age brackets under the elderly category: young old, which is 60 to 75, old, which is 75 to 85, and oldest old, which is 85 and above. As aging progresses, some elderly may find it harder to perform tasks that they could once do with ease. In addition, aging brings on difficulty to remember past events and judgment may become clouded. Primary aging. Primary aging is the gradual and inevitable process of bodily deterioration that takes place in later life. This aging causes the body to become slow and less efficient. Examples of primary aging include loss of melanin, decreased elasticity, body shape shortness, and fat that collects under the face and torso. This type of aging affects the elderly by making them self-conscious of their image and inability to perform tasks on their own, like bending down to pick up objects. Loss of hearing or vision also tends to worsen as one reaches older age. Loss of hearing may discourage the person to interact with others as much, leaving them isolated. It is important to help the elderly around us stay active and visit their doctors regularly to prevent the loss of movement with old age. Secondary aging. Secondary aging refers to the change in health that are caused by illness or disease. These illnesses or diseases impact individuals greatly because it takes away their independence and decreases their quality of life. Examples include hip fractures, dementia, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. Accidents like hip fractures or heart attacks make the affected person weak and not able to care for themselves. So someone who has lived independently now has to be taken care of by a family member or nurse. The transition takes a toll on the elderly and is hard for them to cope with because it makes them uncomfortable. Oftentimes, they are forced to leave their home and move into the home of a family member or care facility. Neurological aging. As we age, our brain begins to slow down and become less efficient than it was before. This occurs because we do not engage in challenging tasks as much as we used to when we were in middle age. Additionally, as you age, your brain and spinal cord lose nerve cells, causing there to be a delay when information is being taken in. This is why it is harder for elderly individuals to take in and retain new information. This breakdown of nerves is also responsible for decreased vision and loss of memory. It is important to exercise your thinking and cognitive processes, and to keep challenging yourself mentally as you progress into old age.
Assisted living is a later life transition in which individuals go from independent living to assisted living and nursing homes. This transition can drastically impact an individual's self-esteem and social emotional well-being. Assisted living facilities offer supportive services to allow elderly individuals to maintain their sense of independence. These facilities typically resemble apartment complexes, complete with individual living spaces and supportive staff to help with transportation and emergencies.
Exercise in later life. The advantage of being active at an older age is that exercise might help slow down the effects of primary and secondary aging processes. Exercise is beneficial, not only in physical ways, but it can also be beneficial in cognitive and psychosocial areas, such as memory and well-being. One big advantage of exercise at an older age is that it induces quick periods of accelerated heart rate. By doing this regularly, the heart is strengthened over time by pumping out larger amounts of blood with each heartbeat. This can in turn help deliver blood more efficiently to each organ in the body. Having this blood move so efficiently will tend to help lower resting heart rate, which is very beneficial during older age. Being active and exercising consistently will help ensure that the brain and other organs receive the oxygenated blood that is needed. In turn, moderate exercise can help enhance the function of the immune system in older individuals. On the other hand, if an older person does too much intensive activity, it can actually lead to a negative impact to the immune system. Exercise can also help activate and strengthen the neuromuscular pathways that are responsible for coordination and balance. If resistance or weight-bearing exercises are also incorporated, it can lead to stronger bones, which are very beneficial in older age. Exercise can also make a big impact on your brain functioning, including your memory. Studies indicate older individuals who exercise regularly perform better on short-term memory tasks than those who do not exercise regularly. Exercise can also make an impact on social interactions with others. People who regularly engage in exercising tend to have more social interactions with their peers because of their decision to go to the gym. This shows how being physically active can help promote social health. Being frequently physically active could be an outlet for the emotions or experiences that an individual may be going through. Going to the gym could be a distraction from the negative emotions that one may experience. Exercising has distractory functions that may help them to better themselves emotionally. The World Health Organization reported that 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week is recommended. It was reported that individuals meeting this minimum requirement lived an average of 3.5 to 4.5 years longer than those who did not meet this minimum. This shows how being active can positively affect one's life. Exercise is a key component of living a long and healthy life. If we implement this into our daily lives, the world will be a much happier place.
Death and dying. Death can be defined as an irreversible cessation of bodily functioning, including heartbeat, respiration, and brain activity, specifically the lack of any electrical brain activity. While death is most commonly reserved for later life, death can occur at any point during the lifespan. There are 4 discernible realities of death: universality, irreversibility, non-functionality, and causality. First, universality indicates that death is a global and consistent truth, meaning that at some point, all living things will experience death. Second, irreversibility indicates that death is final and unable to be reversed. Once death occurs, an organism cannot regain life. Third, non-functionality means that all mental and physical functions have permanently stopped. And finally, causality relates to the notion that death ultimately occurs as a result of biological factors. Thanatology. Thanatology is the scientific study of death. This field of study focuses on the biological, social, and cultural aspects of death. Thanatologists can examine topics ranging from the leading causes of death or the typical life expectancies to the cultural practices surrounding the process of death. Death perspectives.
Cultures' views on death vary greatly across the world. Some have positive views, others have negative views. Cultures with a positive outlook are more likely to engage in riskier behavior. Cultures with a negative outlook tend to behave more cautiously as a result. There's a lot of debate on where people go after they die or if they go anywhere. For instance, Native American cultures hold that people become guardian spirits, whereas in Christianity you are sent to heaven or hell. Spirit worldviews are not unique to Native American tribes. In fact, some African tribes hold positive, spiritual views on life after death. Cultures can also be quite specific about how the dead are laid to rest or dealt with after death. For example, Muslims bury their dead facing towards Mecca. As the Western world experienced the Age of Enlightenment, a more ambivalent view of death was formed. Death was no longer viewed as a collective destiny, but rather a personal preoccupation with the notion of mortality.
Grief and bereavement.
Grief is defined as a reaction to loss, including death. The grief process may be multifaceted, including social, emotional, and even physical components. Bereavement is often associated with a state of sadness and is a specific state of being deprived of someone or something. Mourning involves practices and traditions that individuals engage in surrounding a death event and may also involve matters of faith and religious practices. Grief can be caused by situations, relationships, or even substance abuse. Kubler-Ross created a model of stages of grief that people may go through when faced with a loss. It is more important to note individuals may not necessarily move sequentially and discretely through these stages. Although some people do experience these stages of grief, it is now understood that grief is highly individualized and unpredictable. People may go through all of these stages or none.
Uh-oh. It's no big deal. It's probably not even quicksand. I'm gonna have a good laugh about this tonight with the guys. Well, this is just perfect. Stupid quicksand, stupid jungle. I want to bite someone in the face. Mother. Ah, that stupid jungle. Are you there, God? It's me, Giraffe. Listen, if you would just give me a mulligan on this quicksand thing, I promise. No more peeing on your shorter creatures. What, you get a deal? You know something? I'm cool with this. I bet heaven has all the tender leaves I can eat, and everyone gets their own Slurpee machine. Yeah, take me, sweet death. I await your loving embrace. What? I think I hit the bottom.
Acceptance is when an individual may acknowledge a loved one is actually gone. Acceptance is the fifth and final stage of grief. Once an individual gets to this stage, they may look forward to the end. When a loved one gets to this stage, a person may accept that the loved one is actually gone. This stage is often mistaken for being okay with the death of a loved one, and that is not necessarily the case. This stage is about recognizing the loved one is gone and accepting the loss. It is important to readjust everyday life and reassign roles. Acceptance can take time and will most likely come in bits and pieces. Accepting the death of a loved one can be very difficult. These are a few ways to help make the process easier. 1. Take time to mourn. Recognize that it is okay to process the loss on your own time. Accepting a loss will take a while, so it is okay to grieve. 2. Remember how the person impacted your life. Always remember how they helped shape who you are and carry those memories with you. 3. Continue speaking about them. The more you talk about them, the easier it becomes and the more you get to use your new reality. 4. Know when to get help. Experiencing a loss can take a toll on you emotionally, but when it is too overwhelming, it is important to know that seeking help is an option.
Suicide. Suicide can take many forms and ultimately culminates in the purposeful taking of one's own life. A formal definition of suicide may be warranted to better understand this phenomenon. Suicide may be defined as death from injury, poisoning, or suffocation where there is evidence, either explicit or implicit, that the injury was self-inflicted and that the descendant intended to kill himself or herself. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. In 2018, 48,344 Americans died by suicide. 1.4 million attempts were made during that same year. Middle-aged white men have the highest suicide rate of any demographic. White males accounted for 69.67% of all suicide deaths in 2018. Men die by suicide 3.56 times more often than women. On average, there are 132 suicides per day. In 2018, firearms accounted for more than half of all suicide deaths at 50.57%. Social suicide contagion suggests that when one member of a group commits suicide, other members are at a higher risk for suicide, perhaps because of modeling, increased acceptability, or the impact of the traumatic event on already vulnerable people. Death seekers versus death initiators. The motives surrounding suicide may vary greatly. Death seekers may feel alienated and disoriented from others and society, or are otherwise in the throes of a deep emotional crisis. Death initiators, on the other hand, may seek to end their own life to hasten what is an inevitable death. There are 4 proposed stages of suicide, including suicidal thoughts, suicidal plan, suicidal experimentation, and suicidal attempt. Suicidal thoughts occur when an individual may contemplate the world, including family or friends, if they were to die. In the suicidal plan stage, more concrete plans and methods are considered and isolated. During suicidal experimentation, individuals may actually begin to employ the plan they have considered. Lastly, suicide attempts can either be completed or incompleted. Completed means the person took their own life. Incompleted implies the individuals did not take their own life. If you or someone you know is experiencing a crisis or suicidal thoughts, please call the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention at 1-800-273-8255. Euthanasia. Euthanasia is when an individual assists another in killing themselves to end pain, many times physical pain. There are 2 types of euthanasia, active and passive. Active euthanasia involves taking observable and deliberate action to facilitate death for someone else, such as administering a lethal amount of a drug. Passive euthanasia hastens death by withdrawing life-saving interventions. These include living wills, do not resuscitate orders, and do not hospitalize orders. Physician-assisted suicide is an active form of euthanasia in which a physician may prescribe a drug that will accelerate death if taken in the right dosage. Death with dignity. Death with dignity laws allow ill patients to voluntarily request and receive prescription medication to hasten their death. As of now, 40 states have outright statutory bans on the practice. 5 states, including Washington, Oregon, Montana, New Mexico, and Vermont, currently allow it. Hospice. Death with dignity is directly related to the hospice movement. Hospices specialize in end-of-life care. The treatment at a hospice center focuses on comfort, mitigating the physical and/or psychological distress a dying person may be experiencing. An important concept worth introducing into the later life death and dying dialogue is the concept of ageism. Ageism is the prejudice or discrimination on the grounds of a person's age. This can be casual or systematic. Elderly individuals may experience this type of discrimination in the workforce, in their personal lives, and other endeavors. Overall, an ecological perspective may help to explain the vastly differing views surrounding later life, death, and dying. Individuals and their views are greatly affected by their immediate surroundings. The interactions of various microsystems can also influence one's views. External forces of the exosystem and macrosystem may also have direct or indirect effects on our views of death. And of course, all of these are subject to change throughout the lifetime.